Chapter 595. Yu Qianqiu opened his arms slightly, and a terrifying aura flowed into his body like a tide. The surrounding temperature slowly returned to normal, and the people who had fallen to the ground slowly regained their senses. One by one, they let out a weak moan, looking a little weak. Yulan Do and Guan Zhongkai's cultivation were relatively high. Although their faces were a little pale, it was not a big deal. After all, the death aura that invaded everyone's body had been absorbed by Yu Qianqiu. Yu Qianqiu didn't want to make things too big at the moment. Otherwise, these people present would be in trouble. Even so, everyone looked at Yu Qianqiu with fear in their eyes. Those who could still move dispersed one after another. They had no interest in watching the show. If they had known that they would encounter such a thing, no one would have come to join in the fun. Guan Zhongkai was the most depressed. No one here was more unlucky than him. This was the third time he had experienced this terrifying torture. It was not an exaggeration to say that it was torture. After the terrifying aura invaded his body, it constantly dispelled the vitality in his body. His whole person seemed to have become a walking corpse, and his weak consciousness could not control his body at all. It felt like he was struggling on the edge of death. Every second of suffering was worse than a day that felt like a year, and it was extremely uncomfortable. Yulan Do, who had been messed with twice as soon as she came to cornucopia, also didn't know whether to laugh or cry. The two of them looked at each other and looked back and forth. They found that the lively street had been cleared, and most of the people were hiding somewhere. From time to time, people poked their heads out of the shops on both sides of the street to check. Several disciples of Blue Palace looked at Blue Maple's dismembered body on the ground with complicated expressions. They didn't dare to do anything to Niu Yud, and they didn't even dare to say harsh words. Yu Qianqiu, on the other hand, glanced at them and said indifferently, "Disciples of the Blue Palace, listen up. Go back and tell Fatty Pei that I, Niu Yud, killed him. If he has any complaints, let him come at me." Guan Zhongkai and Yulan Do exchanged glances. This Niu Yud was really not afraid of Pei Fong. The whole street, whether it was the people present or those hiding in the dark, had no doubt that Niu Yud was at the same level as the top 10 experts. "From today onwards, the three of you are my subordinates. If there's any trouble, just mention my name, Niu Yud. Let's go." After Yu Qianqiu finished speaking to Amano and the other two, he turned and left. Amano and the other two followed behind excitedly. They felt as though they had ascended to the heavens in a single bound. Happiness had come too suddenly. Even walking felt light. Many people in the shops on both sides of the street poked their heads out and memorized the faces of Amano and the other two. People like the ruthless magistrate Niu Yud must remember this clearly. In the future, don't make a mistake and cause trouble that can't be resolved. Even Guan Zhongkai and Yulan were looking at Amano and the other two enviously. The two of them also turned around and followed him. "Amano, wait up." A woman's voice came from behind. They all turned around and saw that it was the woman who had gotten into an argument with Amano. It was walking slowly towards them. It was obvious that it was affected by what had just happened, and it was difficult for it to move. Yu Qianqiu frowned and said, "What's the relationship between you and this woman?" Amano hung his head in pain. A man with a short beard beside him cupped his fists and said, "Senior, her name is Li Qiuxiang. She used to be our big brother's dual cultivation partner. She was later spotted by a disciple of the Blue Palace and left with him. Recently, we heard that she was making a living in the cornucopia of Spring Slumber. At first, we didn't believe it, so we hurried over to verify it. We didn't expect it to be her. Big brother wanted to take her away, but she refused. Senior, you've seen everything that happened after that." Yu Qianqiu said, "I only know Amano's name, but I don't know your names." The man with a short beard bowed and said, "Hai Wei." The man who seemed somewhat quiet replied, "Young Lord Amo." Yu Qianqiu looked at the three of them and nodded slightly. "Amano, Hai Wei, young Lord Amo. I'll remember it." He wasn't the only one. Guan Zhongkai, Yulan Do, and the people in the shops on both sides of the street all silently remembered these three names. What a joke, the subordinates of an expert like Nyo Yud naturally had to be remembered. Greetings, Senior Nyo. Li Qiuxiang, who was dressed in a pink gauze and had a pretty face, bowed to Yu Qianqiu. Yu Qianqiu looked at her without batting an eyelid. He didn't know what she wanted. He didn't like women in this line of work, but he didn't hate them either. He had always treated them normally. After all, no woman was born into this line of work. Most of them were forced by life. Of course, Yu Qianqiu had never been too fond of those who did this line of work because they liked ease and hated hard work. Li Qiuxiang turned to look at Amano and said, Amano, you said you would take me away. Do you still mean what you said? Amano suddenly looked up and widened his eyes. He said with some excitement, Qiuxiang, are you really willing to go with me? I'll go with you. Li Qiuxiang nodded seriously. Amano grabbed her hand and nodded repeatedly. Okay, I'll take you away. We'll never be separated again. Even though there weren't many people on the street, whispers could be heard coming from the shops on both sides of the street. Guan Zhongkai and Yulan looked at each other. This woman really knew how to pick the right time. Before, she couldn't even snatch him away. After Amano followed Nyo Yud, she immediately went back on her words. Even though this was normal in the cultivation world, she didn't even try to hide it. The group of girls under Sleeping Spring looked at Li Qiuxiang enviously. They envied her for suddenly flying up the tree branch and climbing up the high branch in the blink of an eye. From now on, she wouldn't have to live a life where everyone could bully and humiliate her. In the future, she might even become a famous figure in the cultivation world. Hai Wei and Mo Xiaojun were quietly sizing up the shocked Nyo Yud. Yu Qianqiu raised his hand and said, wait. Then he asked Li Qiuxiang, didn't you say that you and Amano have nothing to do with each other? Why do you want to go with him now? Senior is wise. Li Qiuxiang bowed and said, in the cultivation world, the weak are prey to the strong. Junior is just a weak girl who is bullied everywhere and longs for someone to protect her. The Amano in the past couldn't even protect himself, so how could he protect me? Junior doesn't have a sense of security if I follow him. Instead, I will become a burden to him. But now, it's different. Amano has Senior's protection, so how many people in the world dare to touch him? This is what Junior is pursuing. Now that I have this opportunity, even if others call me a shameless whore who can be ridden by thousands of men, I will still have to be thick-skinned and give it a try. The group of women under Sleeping Spring all felt sad when they heard this. Yu Qianqiu's expression froze. He shook his head and said, you are really direct. You don't beat around the bush at all. Riding on a sword to traverse the world, white bones fly like a mountain bird. The world is like a tide and people are like water. How many people in the pugilistic world return? For Senior to be able to write such a poem, I know that Senior is an expert who has seen through the world of mortals. No matter what lies I say in front of Senior, it will be hard to escape Senior's discerning eyes. Why should Junior knowingly violate the law? Li Qiuxiang bowed again and said, Junior's life has not been easy. I regret that I should not have stepped into the cultivation world. If I had known this would happen, would have become an ordinary mortal's wife. But when I look back, the tree longs for peace, the wind never ceases. I beg Senior to fulfill my wish. This flattery made Yu Qianqiu feel comfortable. Moreover, her words were polite and well-mannered, so he couldn't help but look at her in a different light. Yu Qianqiu was very surprised and looked at her seriously. Helplessness piled up on his face. The wisdom in his eyes was faintly discernible, but most of the time, it was covered by the vicissitudes and numbness. Looking at Tian Ye's pleading eyes again, Yu Qianqiu paused. Suddenly, he narrowed his eyes and snorted coldly, Li Qiuxiang, although you said you want to follow Tian Yi, you actually want to follow me. But don't you think about what you did in the Sleeping Spring brothel? No matter what you say, do you think I will keep a woman like you by my side? Li Qiuxiang's face immediately turned pale when he said these harsh words. The group of women in the Sleeping Spring brothel were all dejected. What was the difference between him and them? He had smashed the little dreams they had in their hearts. That beautiful lady boss bit her lips with her silver teeth as she stared at Yu Qianqiu. Senior. Tian Yi was almost begging. Yu Qianqiu stared at him coldly, and the surrounding air became cold again. Hai Wei and Mo Xiaojun quickly pulled him back, indicating that he should not anger the senior. Tian Yi, you know what kind of filthy business she's doing now. Don't you care at all? Yu Qianqiu turned to Li Qiuxiang and said, Li Qiuxiang, one must know one's limits. Like you said, you're already a whore that thousands of men ride on. Tian Yi might have accepted you in a moment of impulse, but do you really think he can take the mockery of others in the future? Can he endure the torment day after day, year after year? Aren't you afraid that he'll be like the Blue Palace disciples and dump you again? How many times do you want to be dumped by a man in this life? Every word was like a gem. Li Qiuxiang's face was pale. She looked at Tian Yi in a daze and asked with a trembling voice, do you care? You will. Tian Yi covered her mouth and shook his head, I only care about you. You should know that. Hee hee. What a joke. Yu Qianqiu said sarcastically, Tian Yi, even if you don't care, ask her. If one day, I, Niu Yud, am gone, and you, Tian Yi, are without my protection. Humph. If she meets the disciple of Bai Changchun, the world's #1 expert, who's even more powerful than the Blue Palace disciples, will she abandon you again? She's already said that what she needs is a sense of security, not you. Tian Yi, think carefully. The man and the woman looked at each other in a daze. They were provoked by Yu Qianqiu's words one after another. It was as if he had crushed their hearts, rubbed them, and trampled on them again. The two of them were so disheartened that they even wanted to die. How cruel. Even Guan Zhongkai and Yulan Do, the two old foxes, felt that it was too much. They looked at each other and shook their heads. They thought to themselves, if you can't stand it, just kill him. You're an expert, do you really have to do this? You said that Lanfeng's mouth is cheap, but your mouth is even worse than Lanfeng's. Will you? Tian Yi asked with difficulty in a hoarse voice. Will I? Li Qiuxiang murmured to herself in a daze. She seemed to have thought of something. After a long time, her eyes regained clarity, but a pitiful smile appeared on her face. She broke free from Tian Yi's hand. Tian Yi shook his head slowly. He looked at Li Qiuxiang with despair in his eyes. Suddenly, his eyes widened. He saw Li Qiuxiang's hands forming claws and clawing at his own face. Under her ferocious fingers, deep bloody marks appeared. His skin and flesh were torn open, revealing his bones. Blood flowed down his chest. Chapter 596. She was a beautiful woman with a beautiful face. In the blink of an eye, her beautiful face became a bloody mess. The white bones that were exposed were even more frightening. How could one see her original face clearly? For such a beautiful woman to do such a vicious thing to her own face, how much determination did she have to make to do so? Everyone was stunned. The heads that stuck out from the shop could not shrink back in. They all looked at this scene in disbelief. There was such a crazy woman, sister-in-law. Hai Wei and Mo Xiaojun cried out in unison. When the stunned Amano came to his senses, he let out a tragic cry, no. She grabbed the hands that were still scratching her face and asked, why did you do this, why did you do this? She was already sobbing. Li Qiuxiang raised that face that had become abnormally terrifying. Blood continuously flowed, and the front of her body was dyed red with blood. He chuckled and said, Amano, do you believe me? I believe, I always believed. It's all my fault, I shouldn't have hesitated just now. Tian Yi wailed and stomped his feet. No. It's not your fault. Li Qiuxiang shook her bloody face and said, Senior is right. If there is someone to blame, it's me. Looking for a sense of security is just an excuse. It's my own weak mind. I've always wanted to climb up the social ladder. I deserve this. Don't say any more. Hurry up and stop the bleeding. Tian Yi wanted to raise his hand to cover her bleeding face, but her face was too badly scratched. He did not know where to start. Li Qiuxiang shook her head again and smiled. It's better if my blood flows clean. I want to be a new person. Unfortunately, her face was too horrifying. No one could tell that she was smiling. Sister Qiuxiang. Below spring slumber, a woman who was probably on good terms with Li Qiuxiang wanted to rush over but was held back by the lady boss. The lady boss said with tears in her eyes, "Let her. This is her chance. Don't disturb her." The group of women all started sobbing. "Hai Wei, Xiaojun, hurry up and help me. Help her stop the bleeding." Tian Yi was flustered. He did not know where to start. Hai Wei and Mo Xiaojun hurriedly took out some things from their storage bags, and the three men squatted there and got busy. Guan Zhongkai and Yulan looked at the culprit at the same time, only to see Miao Yud standing there coldly without any expression on his face. The two of them were speechless. People really couldn't be compared with each other. By the time the three men were done, Li Qiuxiang's entire face was almost completely covered. Yu Qianshou snorted coldly. He turned around and said, "Guan Zhongkai, let's go, your Grand Master Yin Baikong is still waiting for me." Guan Zhongkai and Yulan secretly looked at Li Qiuxiang, then followed behind Yu Qianshou without another word. As the three of them walked forward, all the heads in the shop that had been shaken once again shrunk back. "Senior." Amano ran over and stopped in front of Yu Qianshou. He knelt down and begged, "Senior, please let me bring her along. She has repented." "Whether she repented or not, what does that have to do with me? Either you go with her, or you go with me. Choose one of the two, do as you see fit. Don't block my way, get out of my way." Yu Qianshou kicked Amano to the side of the street. Under the watchful eyes of the crowd, Guan Zhongkai and Yulan suddenly realized that it was a little embarrassing to follow behind Miao Yud. They scratched their faces in unison and looked at each other blankly. Yu Qianshou walked a few steps, then suddenly turned around and said, "What about the two of you? Are you going with the two of them, or me? There's only one chance, I don't have the patience to ask again." He was asking Hai Wei and Mo Xiaojun. A bunch of heads popped out from the shop again, all staring at Hai Wei and Mo Xiaojun, waiting to see what they would do. Would they go with the two of them, or with Miao Yud? However, everyone guessed that the two of them would choose the latter. This was definitely an opportunity that could only be encountered by chance. Miao Yud, who had the strength to rival the top 10 experts. Who could resist such a temptation? It was a great temptation. As the two of them, they had experienced it firsthand and were struggling in their hearts. On one hand, they were good brothers who had been together for many years, on the other hand, they had the opportunity to change their lives. It was indeed difficult to decide which way to go. Amano quietly climbed up from the side of the street and walked to the two of them. He smiled bitterly and patted their shoulders heavily, saying, "Go. Go with Senior Nyo, this is a rare opportunity, make good use of it." "Big brother." Hai Wei pressed the hand on his shoulder. Mo Xiaojun smiled and asked, "Big brother, what about you?" Amano looked at Li Qiuxiang, who was standing alone, and smiled warmly. Some people can't miss a second chance after they've missed it once. "You two follow Senior Nyo well, take care." After saying that, he pushed the two of them away and walked resolutely towards Li Qiuxiang. The two of them looked at each other and suddenly nodded heavily at each other. They bowed deeply to Yu Qianshou, then turned around and shouted, "Big brother," and strode away without looking back. The crowd was in an uproar. The two of them were clearly giving up the opportunity to follow Miao Yud. Everyone was somewhat impressed, but they also felt that it was foolish to do so. After killing Blue Maple, the three of them had no way out. Without Miao Yud's protection, they might not even live to see tomorrow. Yu Qianshou silently turned around and squinted at the three of them. Guan Zhongkai and Yulan shook their heads slightly. This Miao Yud had a bad temper. Daring to disrespect him like this, the three of them were probably going to suffer. Amano turned around, his expression unusually agitated, but he reprimanded, "What are you doing? Go back, go back." Hai Wei laughed heartily, "Big brother, don't try to persuade me. We've been brothers for so many years, and we've come out of bloodshed together. If we suddenly break up, I won't be used to it. Mo Xiaojun nodded. That's right. Big brother doesn't want to miss sister-in-law again, but the two of us don't want to miss you, big brother, even once. Otherwise, we'll regret it for the rest of our lives. Aren't you stupid? If you follow me, Blue Palace won't let you go. Amano laughed and scolded with tears in his eyes. Hai Wei and Mo Xiaojun looked at each other and laughed. Hai Wei said heartily, we'll talk about the future in the future. At most, we'll just die. Besides, it's not certain. The three of us have been able to survive in the cultivation world back to back until now. Our lives have always been tough. Li Qiuxiang, whose face was covered with a white cloth, suddenly burst into tears. The three of them were surprised when they heard her shout, Go! Go! I don't want you to care about me. I'm not worth it. I don't want to have anything to do with you anymore. The three of them walked over silently. Amano put his arm around her shoulders and chuckled, Stop talking nonsense. Let's go. They had only taken a few steps when Li Qiuxiang suddenly broke free and rushed to a place a few meters away from Yu Qianqiu. She knelt down and kowtowed repeatedly, It's all my fault. I shouldn't have stained Senior's eyes. I'll bear all the blame alone. It has nothing to do with them. Senior, just pretend that you've never seen me. As soon as she finished speaking, a flying sword flashed out of the storage bag on her waist that was stained with blood. Li Qiuxiang grabbed the flying sword and swiftly slid it across her neck. She was very decisive, No. Amano and the other two shouted in despair. It was too late to save her even if they wanted to. The women below Spring Slumber cried out in alarm, Humph. Yu Qianqiu snorted coldly and waved his hand. When the sword in Li Qiuxiang's hand was about to touch her neck, it suddenly shattered into a cloud of silver powder that drifted away. This scene made everyone suck in a cold breath. From a few meters away, with a wave of his hand, the flying sword was shattered into powder without any sound. If this trick was used on a human, what would the consequences be? Killing without a sound or a trace. Unbeknownst to them, this trick of Yu Qianqiu had no effect on a human. Amano and the other two quickly rushed over. Li Qiuxiang simply wouldn't stop until she was dead. After a slight pause, she bounced up and slammed her head into a tree by the roadside a few meters away. When Amano and the other two reached out, they almost touched the corner of her clothes, but they still missed and didn't manage to catch her. Amano kicked the ground and dodged to the side. He reached out to grab her again. His cultivation level was much higher than Li Qiuxiang's. Although he was a little slower, he still managed to catch her. TSS. The corner of her clothes that he grabbed was directly torn apart. Li Qiuxiang had already made up her mind to die. She used a lot of strength and managed to grab her clothes but didn't manage to stop her. She still crashed straight into the tree, damn it. Yu Qianqiu was really speechless. He quickly hit the tree with his palm. Just as Li Qiuxiang was about to crash into the tree, thick white smoke suddenly burst out from the tree. Li Qiuxiang's figure disappeared into the smoke. In the blink of an eye, she emerged from the other side and fell into the shop opposite. The thick white smoke was like white silk, shooting towards Yu Qianqiu at high speed, and all of it disappeared into his palm. Amano's mouth opened and closed. He didn't dare to hesitate anymore. He directly flashed into the shop and grabbed Li Qiuxiang's palm that was about to hit the top of his head. He injected his energy into her body and quickly controlled her. He shook her shoulder and shouted, Why are you so stupid? Everyone looked at Li Qiuxiang, who was covered in dust, and then looked at the tree outside. All of them were dumbfounded. They saw that the branches of the tree, from top to bottom, had all turned a deathly gray. The originally dark green leaves had also shriveled and lost their luster. And there was a hole in the tree. Obviously, it was left behind when Li Qiuxiang passed through it. Everyone stared dumbfoundedly, not knowing what was going on. In particular, the white smoke that Yu Qianqiu had sent out with his palm strike was even more baffling. In the shop, Li Qiuxiang, who was being carried by Amano, muttered to herself, I have no dignity when I live. Is it so hard to die with a little dignity? Why don't you let me die? If you want to have dignity, you can't exchange it with death. Yu Qianqiu stood outside and said calmly, I've saved you twice. This life of yours no longer belongs to you. It belongs to me. From today onwards, you are mine. Whether you live or die, it's not up to you. As soon as these words came out, gasps of surprise sounded everywhere. The meaning of Niu Yud's words couldn't be clearer. Li Qiuxiang's bitterness was over, and she had been accepted by this ruthless judge. Even though these words were a little roundabout, as long as one wasn't a fool, they could tell. Chapter 597. The ones who found it the most unbelievable were probably Tian Yi and the others. Li Qiuxiang stared at Yu Qianqiu in a daze. Tian Yi, who came to his senses, shook Li Qiuxiang with wild joy and said, Hurry up and thank Senior Niu. Hurry, hurry. He was so excited that he didn't know what to say. He directly pulled her out. Hai Wei and Mo Xiaojun also followed in surprise. The 3 men and 1 woman knelt down side by side and kowtowed. Li Qiuxiang choked with sobs. She wanted to say thank you, but she couldn't. The women in the dormant spring building were crying, but no one knew whether they were crying for Li Qiuxiang or crying for their own tragic fate. The 3 of you have decided to leave, so you have nothing to do with me anymore. Why are you still bowing to me? Yu Qianqiu stared at Tian Yi and the others and said indifferently. This sentence was no less than a lightning strike. The 4 of them froze there, not knowing what to do. The women in the dormant spring building all quieted down and looked over quietly. Guan Zhongkai and Yulan looked at each other. This Niu Yud was too good at tormenting people. The people in the shops on the street shook their heads and smiled bitterly. At first, the 3 of them left for this woman. Now that Niu Yud accepted this woman, he didn't accept the 3 of them. No matter what, they still couldn't be together. Senior. Li Qiuxiang said with a trembling voice, please give them another chance. However, Yu Qianqiu slowly closed his eyes and ignored her. Tian Yi and the others looked at each other and smiled bitterly. Tian Yi slowly stood up and said to Li Qiuxiang, the 3 of us have nothing to begin with, so we won't lose anything if we leave. However, since you have a way out, this trip is not in vain. Qiuxiang, this opportunity is hard to come by. Follow Senior well. Let's go. Tian Yi said to Hai Wei and Mo Xiaojun helplessly. The 3 of them silently turned around and left. No. Li Qiuxiang let out a heart-wrenching scream and kowtowed 3 times to Yu Qianqiu. Without saying a word, she jumped up and blocked the 3 of them, saying, Tian Yi, you can't leave me alone. If you want to leave, we'll leave together. As soon as these words came out, everyone present was moved. In order to have a good future, this woman had fallen to the point of selling her body. Now, she had disfigured herself and committed suicide, making her life incomparably tragic. She had finally found a good future, but for the sake of a man, she gave it up without hesitation. This kind of courage and temperament made a bunch of people with eyes of power and hearts of stone feel deep respect. Just based on this point, even if she had sold herself in a brothel, no one would look down on her now. Sister-in-law. Hai Wei couldn't help but shout. Mo Xiaojun laughed, this trip is really worth it, I found a good sister-in-law. Amano excitedly grabbed Li Qiuxiang's hand and nodded, okay, let's go together. The 4 of them looked at each other and silently moved forward, enjoying the attention of everyone. The group of women in the dormant spring house, however, seemed to have received a rude awakening, and all of them were dumbfounded. In a trance, he seemed to have understood something. Was it worth it to go through so much suffering and even sell his body to pursue something? As a woman, who else could be happier than Li Qiuxiang? After Li Qiuxiang had died once, she had finally found what she truly wanted. The group of women, each and every one of them felt a sense of loss, crying silently, remembering the happiness that they had so easily given up. In the beginning, they wanted nothing more than to tear Niu Yud into pieces. Why was this person so cold-hearted, ravaging these people to the point that they hovered between life and death, wanting to break up a pair of mandarin ducks with a bitter fate. However, they could only keep their hatred in their hearts. If they wanted to take care of Nyoyud, even if they all attacked him together, they wouldn't have the ability. Now, they were envious of Li Qiuxiang. After Nyoyud let her die once, he helped her find her sense of self. Among the people present, who would look down on her because she had sold herself, everyone was certain that she and Amano would truly be together for the rest of their lives. After this ordeal of hovering between life and death, no matter how cruel the reality was in the future, he and she would never leave each other, and would never be separated again. Although Li Qiuxiang's face was disfigured, from today onwards, she had truly transcended the sea of bitterness. They were incomparably envious of Li Qiuxiang. They had the same fate, but different fortunes. Now, they were very much looking forward to meeting their fated Nyoyud. However, where was the Nyoyud who could save their fates? Suddenly, a cold snort came from the quiet street, coming and going as you please. Who do you think I, Nyoyud, am? It's over. These two words suddenly appeared in everyone's minds. With a swoosh, all eyes were focused on Nyoyud, who had his eyes slightly closed. Even Yulan secretly clicked her tongue, but Guan Zhongkai felt a nameless fire in his heart, and he couldn't help but glare at Nyoyud. He thought, you've already tormented them to this extent, don't tell me you still don't want to let them go? If you want to be a bad person, then be more direct, don't beat around the bush, there's no one like you. The group of women in dormant spring instantly tensed up, looking at Nyoyud worriedly. Almost all of them were praying in their hearts, please spare them. The beautiful lady boss, who had experienced all kinds of things in the mortal world, suddenly had an epiphany, and there was no worry on her face. Instead, her bright eyes were glowing, and she looked at Nyoyud with a smile. Amano and the other three stiffened, unable to move anymore, and slowly turned around. They knew that with Nyoyud's miraculous means just now, even if they wanted to escape, they wouldn't be able to. If he wanted to kill them, it would be as easy as raising his hand. Where could they escape to? Senior, can you let us go? Amano smiled bitterly. Yu Qianqiu slowly opened his eyes, staring at the four of them, and said coldly, the four of you have betrayed me once, I hope that the four of you will remember it. Although I, Nyoyud, have always won people over with my virtue, there can't be a second time. I hope that you will grasp this second chance well, and it will also be your last chance. If you dare to do it again, I guarantee that you won't even have the chance to regret. Let's go. Yu Qianqiu threw a sentence at Guan Zhongkai and Yulan, who were beside him, and turned to leave. The two of them were still pondering the meaning in his words, and then they immediately came to a realization. The two of them looked at each other and smiled, then looked at Amano and the other three, and shook their heads. Before leaving, Guan Zhongkai waved at the four of them, and said, why are the four of you still in a daze? Didn't you hear Senior Nyo say that he has already given you a second chance? What are you still standing there for? Hurry up and catch up. After saying this, Guan Zhongkai suddenly felt a sense of relief in his heart, a very refreshing kind of relief. He was even more pleased than when his cultivation had increased by a level, and he didn't understand why. The two of them followed Nyoyud slowly forward, and they no longer felt embarrassed like before. Instead, they felt that they had gained face. What was the demeanor of an expert? The behavior of this awesome person in front of them was the demeanor of an expert. Happiness came too suddenly, and Amano and the other three were so excited that they didn't know what to say. Words could no longer describe their current feelings. Don't make Senior Nyo unhappy anymore, hurry up and catch up. In the shop, a hot-blooded youth with an unknown name waved and shouted with all his might. Hurry up and catch up, hurry up and catch up. Everyone couldn't help but shout, and the cornucopia was filled with a passion that had never been seen before. An unforeseen legendary story was happening in front of everyone's eyes. It was filled with too much unpredictability, revisiting the forces in human nature, revisiting the common joys and sorrows in the cultivation world, revisiting the true nature that everyone had long forgotten. It was like a dream, full of ups and downs, twists and turns. In the midst of despair, everyone saw the ending that they had been anticipating. Everyone's emotions that had been suppressed for a long time couldn't help but burst out in this wave of shouting. Bang! In the midst of everyone's shouting, there was a sudden sound of collapse, and smoke and dust rose in all directions on the street, suppressing everyone's emotions that had yet to be completely vented. They saw that the tree that Li Qiuxiang had pierced through suddenly collapsed, and in the blink of an eye, the tree turned into dust that filled the air. Everyone gasped again, and only now did they understand the meaning of Niu Yud's palm. It turned out that this tree had already been smashed into dust by Niu Yud's palm, and that was why Li Qiuxiang was fine when she rammed into it. Now, the tree was still standing here, but it was just an illusion. In the end, after being shaken by everyone's shouting, it collapsed on the spot. Everyone looked at Niu Yud, who was slowly moving forward, and his gait was so calm. His back was faintly discernible in the dust, and the more he showed the demeanor of an expert, the more mysterious he became. The group of women in Sleeping Spring Loft still had tears in their eyes, and they all stared at the back of that figure, their eyes full of admiration and respect. The graceful lady boss bit her lip with her pearly white teeth, and murmured with a smile, "Bad guy. Why did you have to make such a simple matter full of ups and downs, causing me to be vexed for so long?" Although she scolded like this, how could she not understand in her heart? If Niu Yud didn't do this, would Amano and Li Qiuxiang really last long? Not necessarily. Now that Li Qiuxiang had been forced to be reborn from the dead, and had been reborn, she could now be an upright person. He had already given Li Qiuxiang the dignity that she wanted to be a human, and the future would depend on Li Qiuxiang herself. Hidden under the cold and indifferent surface was his good intentions. Ruthless, decisive, resourceful, intelligent, and capable, this was a real man. The lady boss, who had experienced all kinds of situations in the world, secretly evaluated Niu Yud in her heart. Amano felt that his throat was a little dry, and a simple syllable jumped out of his mouth, "Let's go." The four of them nodded excitedly, and didn't care that the dust would dirty their bodies. Four figures flew up, passed through the pervasive smoke, and followed behind the three people in front. "Niu Yud, all of you get back here." A delicate shout suddenly rang out from the street. F***CK. Who had such guts? Everyone turned their heads to look, and the dust had already gradually dissipated. They saw the lady boss of Sleeping Spring Loft standing in the middle of the street, her hands on her voluptuous and graceful waist, like a shrew cursing in the street, staring at the people in front of her with her almond-shaped eyes. The crowd was in an uproar. Did she want to die? She actually called the ruthless magistrate Niu Yud by his name? What was going on today? Accidents kept happening one after another. The people in front of them were stunned, and they all turned around. Yu Qianqiu was even more baffled, and his face was full of astonishment. Guan Zhongkai shouted angrily, "Yan Yu, what are you trying to do? Are you tired of living?" Chapter 598. In the rear hall of the treasure-gathering hall at the foot of the God of Wealth Peak, Yin Baikong, clad in a black robe, stood upright with his eyes closed, silently listening to the movements in the distance. He could only hear the cheers from time to time, and at other times, it was so quiet that there was no sound at all. Yin Baikong frowned and opened his eyes. "Why aren't they here yet? What the hell is Niu Yud doing?" Standing at the side, Sikong Ju, who looked even older than his master, said, "Master, why don't you go back first? I'll welcome him. How could a mere Niu Yud make you wait here for so long?" Yin Baikong was a little hesitant, but he saw a person excitedly rushing in from outside. The person nodded at Sikong Ju and bowed to him. "Master, under Niu Yud's interference, the Blue Palace's disciple was killed. Niu Yud is now..." The man reported everything that had happened so far in detail. Yin Baikong's face was full of smiles when he heard that a disciple of Blue Palace had been killed. He was imagining Fatty Pei's furious reaction when he heard the news. Suddenly, he heard that Niu Yud was entangled by a girl from a brothel. He could not help but be stunned. He chuckled and said, "Interesting. Come, let's go and take a look." "Spring Slumber Tower?" Sikong Ju asked. Seeing his master nod his head, he immediately said anxiously, "Master, with your identity, how can you go to that kind of place?" Sigh. Yin Baikong raised his hand to stop him from speaking. He smiled happily and said, Niu Yud's cultivation is probably not lower than mine. Even he is willing to throw away his face to tangle with them. What else do I have to worry about? I'll just watch the show. But this will make it seem as if you are personally going to pay a visit to him. Sikongju's words were once again interrupted. Yin Baikong shook his head and said, What time is it now? You still care about that? Let's go and take a look. Since his master had already made his decision, it would not be good for him to stop him again and again, so he could only follow him out. However, how could the scene of Yin Baikong showing his face here be small? No matter how low-key he was, more than 10 experts at the end of the Tribulation Transcendence stage immediately appeared to accompany him. Guan Zhongkai couldn't understand it. She was a smart woman who was used to seeing where the wind blew, but she was the only one who could take advantage of others. No one could take advantage of her. But today, he took the wrong medicine and rushed to die. Glancing at Li Qiuxiang, he felt a little depressed. Could it be that she was addicted to suicide today? The lady boss rolled her eyes at him. She was so alluring that the men in the shops on both sides of the street swallowed their saliva. However, everyone knew that this piece of fragrant meat was notoriously hard to get. They could only enjoy it with their eyes and let their imaginations run wild. She dared to play for real. Although she was a woman, she had a wide range of connections and was not someone ordinary people could afford to offend. Thus, all of them unscrupulously glanced at her curvaceous and graceful figure, their eyes filled with greed without any restraint. Guan Zhongkai was stunned when she rolled her eyes at him. He cursed in his heart, Smelly woman, one day I'll get you on my bed and let you know how powerful I am. Although he was still scowling, he could no longer be stubborn. His imposing manner weakened as he shouted, Yen Yu, what do you want? So her name was Yen Yu. Most people who dared to do this kind of business had a wide range of connections. If there was a chance, he could make friends with them. It would be beneficial to him. Yu Qianqiu sized her up seriously. Previously, he had been maintaining the demeanor of an expert, so he hadn't looked her in the eye. Now that he saw her clearly, he couldn't help but praise her in his heart. She was indeed a rare beauty in the cultivation world. I'll settle the score with him. Yen Yu pointed one of her slender fingers at Yu Qianqiu without hesitation. Everyone was in an uproar. This coquettish lady boss really didn't want to live anymore. They all shook their heads with some regret. It was a pity for this good body. They hoped that the ruthless judge, Niu Yud, would be merciful. Otherwise, the treasure bowl would lose a beautiful scenery that was pleasing to the eye. Guan Zhongkai glanced at the puzzled Yu Qianqiu and immediately shouted, Senior Niu doesn't know you. What's there to settle the score with you? Don't mess around. If you anger Senior Niu, no one can protect you. Then he laughed at Yu Qianqiu and said, Senior, don't bother with this crazy woman. She has always been crazy. He still wanted to try to protect her. After all, she was a piece of meat that he had never tasted before. It would be a pity to ruin it. However, with Niu Yud's strange temper, he could only give it a try. If it didn't work, he wouldn't come forward again. No matter how fragrant the meat was, it wasn't as important as his own life. Although this was the headquarters of the World Commerce Association, he was very sure that Niu Yud wouldn't have any misgivings when he attacked. He didn't want to be implicated. Yu Qianqiu raised his hand, indicating for him to shut up. Then he put his hands behind his back and slowly walked back with narrowed eyes. Guan Zhongkai and Yulan looked at each other and smiled bitterly. The group had no choice but to follow him back. Among them, Li Qiuxiang was a little nervous. She understood that although the lady boss was sometimes shrewish, she still took care of the sisters in the building. She more or less didn't want anything to happen to her. However, her own identity was awkward and it wasn't good for her to speak. Yen Yu watched as Yu Qianqiu coldly walked over. Her heart was thumping wildly. It would be a lie if she said she wasn't afraid, but she didn't want to miss this opportunity to get to know Niu Yud. Some men decided that as long as it was worth it, they would happily make their move. Otherwise, once they missed it, there wouldn't be another chance. Her heart was thumping wildly, but on the surface, she was shrewish and calm. The group of women in the dormant spring building turned pale, revealing timid expressions. They didn't know why the lady boss would provoke such a terrifying person. Yu Qianqiu walked over with his hands behind his back. He coldly stood in front of Yan Yu, and at the same time saw the flash of fear in the other's eyes. He snorted coldly and circled around Yan Yu, sizing up her figure without the slightest scruple. Yan Yu wanted to pretend to be calm, but she also felt her hair stand on end. She felt her body stiffen as she stood there. When he returned to face Yan Yu once more, Yu Qianqiu stretched out a hand, and his 2 fingers curled as he stroked her fair, tender, and round chin. He said indifferently, "You want to settle the score with me? You're not afraid of me?" The surroundings were deathly silent. No one was breathing heavily as they watched this scene. It was hard for everyone to imagine what kind of scene it would be when such a beautiful woman suddenly splattered with blood. The atmosphere was very tense. "I've seen many men. Why would I be afraid of you?" She replied calmly, but her body remained motionless. Yu Qianqiu's 2 fingers slid down to her exposed shoulders. He gently caressed them and said, "You still say you're not afraid of me? I'm getting goosebumps." As soon as he finished speaking, he couldn't help but snicker. He cursed inwardly, "Damn it." Facing such a beautiful woman, who pretended to be an expert, was a bastard. In any case, I won't pretend anymore. Niu Yud was laughing lewdly. Everyone was stunned. Yan Yu breathed a sigh of relief. She slapped away Yu Qianqiu's slap and said, "You're an expert. Don't be serious." She thought to herself, "It'd be strange if I wasn't scared. I'm about to pee my pants because of you." Yu Qianqiu's hand that had been slapped away went back to her soft waist. He chuckled and said, "Didn't you say you want to settle accounts with me? How?" He pointed at the dormant spring restaurant and said, "Shall we go to your room, get on your bed, and strip naked? Then we can settle accounts. Don't take advantage of me." Yan Yu's shoulders shook and her soft waist shook. She pushed Yu Qianqiu away and said, "It's to settle accounts." Clang! The sound of a door being knocked over came from one of the shops. Everyone's eyes almost popped out of their sockets. They all thought they were seeing things. In the atmosphere of sharpening knives, the 2 of them suddenly turned into flirting. Who would have thought? Who would have thought? The tense atmosphere suddenly became ambiguous. It was hard for everyone to get used to it. Guan Zhongkai and Yulan looked at each other. Everyone admired the lady boss's courage. She was indeed a beauty who had seen the world. Even Niu Yud raised his hands in surrender. Settle accounts? Yu Qianqiu looked at the signboard of the dormant spring restaurant in astonishment. He asked suspiciously, "We've never met before, right? It's also my first time coming to Cornucopia. When did I ever patronize your business or owe you money?" The 3 of them. Yan Yuchong pointed at Amano and the other 2 and said, "The 3 of them came here to spend money, but they didn't pay a single cent. Now they want to run away after following you. If I don't ask you for money, who should I ask?" Yu Qianqiu was speechless. Amano and the other 2 were even more embarrassed. Guan Zhongkai didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He said, "Yan Yu, don't go too far. This is only a small amount of money. With Senior Niu's reputation, it's far more than this amount. You're usually a very shrewd person. What are you doing today?" "Master Guan, that's where you're wrong." Yan Yu waved her arm and pointed at the women downstairs. She said, "Us sisters don't have an easy life. We're in the flesh business, which is looked down upon by everyone. Of course, Master Guan naturally doesn't care about this small amount of money. But for us, it's money that we shamelessly exchanged with our dignity." Turning his head, he said to Yu Qianqiu, "It's true that you, Senior Niu, are an expert of the present age, but do you have the nerve to shortchange us brothers and sisters, who shed blood and tears and sold our dignity in exchange for a little bit of money?" His words almost made Yu Qianqiu feel ashamed. Yan Yu turned her head and said to Guan Zhongkai, "Master Guan, my sleeping spring loft has always paid taxes in full and on time. We've never been late. It stands to reason that we should enjoy the protection of your World Chamber of Commerce and help us collect our debts from our creditors. How can you be like this? You're the first to break the rules. How can we do business in the future? You. Guan Zhongkai was speechless at her big accusation. At this moment, someone suddenly shouted, "Well said. From today onwards, Sleeping Spring Loft's business in Cornucopia will no longer collect any taxes. It's tax-free." The voice rolled and echoed throughout the whole street with great momentum. It was easy to imagine the background of someone who dared to speak so arrogantly in Cornucopia. Guan Zhongkai's expression changed greatly. Everyone looked towards the source of the voice. Yu Qianqiu narrowed his eyes and his pupils shrank. A few dozen people walked over from the street. The person in the lead was a well-dressed man in a black robe, calmly walking over. Yu Qianqiu's gaze fell on Sikongju beside him. The identity of the person who could make Sikongju accompany him was obvious. In addition, he had seen this person's appearance in the portraits of the various World Chamber of Commerce branches. Although he didn't have the sage-like demeanor in the portraits, who else could it be other than Yin Baikong? A late-stage soul formation expert, one of the top 10 experts in the world, Yin Baikong, had come in person. Chapter 599. Yin Baikong was also sizing up Yu Qianqiu. He had seen the portrait of Niu Yud sent by the branch. After identifying him, a smile appeared on his face. He quickened his pace and left the entourage behind him, striding towards a clear goal. It's Yin Baikong. A young man's eyes widened. He couldn't help but shout, but was slapped by the teacher next to him. The latter whispered, "You dare to call him by his name here? Do you want to die?" The young man shut his mouth in embarrassment. Niu Yud's limelight was instantly stolen by Yin Baikong. Everyone's eyes were fixed on Yin Baikong's figure as he moved forward. One of the top 10 experts in the world. There were only a few spirit-severing late-stage experts in the world. For most people, he was a legendary figure that they had never seen before. This person usually lived on the God of Wealth Peak in the Treasure Basin. Although it felt close at hand, not everyone had the opportunity to see him. Usually, everyone would look up at the peak, wanting to see the true appearance of one of the top 10 experts through the misty clouds. This was something that every cultivator who entered the Treasure Basin couldn't help but do. After all, not every spirit-severing late-stage expert could live so close to them. How could other spirit-severing late-stage experts give everyone the opportunity to look up at them? Especially the legendary #1 expert in the world, Bai Changchun. Most cultivators only knew of this legend in the demon domain. Apart from those spirit-severing late-stage experts, who else had seen him? Even if Bai Changchun appeared on the street at this time, who would recognize him? This legendary figure at the peak of the cultivation world, every time he appeared, it would be earth-shattering, shocking the entire cultivation world. When everyone arrived at the place where the legend once appeared, there was no trace of him. It made people sigh, they didn't even have the opportunity to look up at him. Although the God of Wealth Peak was just a misty mountain, it was enough to make the hearts of the cultivators who entered this place feel heavy. This was because the first thing that caught the eyes of the cultivators who came here was this mountain peak where the legendary figure lived. Over time, everyone came here with the mentality of a pilgrimage. Yin Baikong was like this God of Wealth Peak, intimidating the entire treasure basin. Those who came here to do business almost didn't need to be restrained. They obediently did things according to the rules, no one dared to cause trouble. Of course, people like Niu Yud were rare. Other than the disciples of the World Commerce Company, not many people had seen Yin Baikong's true appearance, but the various shops of the Cornucopia World Commerce Company all had Yin Baikong's portrait. No one had seen him in person, but they already knew him. At this moment, the real person appeared, a legend of the cultivation world. The street was quiet, only the footsteps of the dozens of people could be heard. Damn it. This old bastard really gave me face. He actually came to welcome me personally. He really made me proud. Yu Qianqiu was not stingy with his face full of smiles. However, in his heart, he was somewhat grumbling. Unfortunately, it was not convenient for him to use Yu Qianzhou's identity to do bad things. What a waste. The name of Niu Yud could not be used for long. It was too famous, and it would be a pity to lose it. Yan Yu was startled, and she felt a little nervous. She had only heard of this legendary figure for many years, but now, he was walking towards her, even though she knew that he was not here for her. When she was still a dozen meters away from Yu Qianzhou, Yin Baikong laughed heartily and said, "I heard that Brother Niu was coming, so I have been waiting for you. However, I still haven't seen Brother Niu at God of Wealth Peak. I was impatient and wanted to meet you, so I came here abruptly. I hope I didn't disturb Brother Niu's mood." As he said this, he glanced meaningfully at Sleeping Spring Loft. Although these words were a bit mocking, whether it was the content or the face, it was enough. Even Yin Baikong addressed Niu Yud as brother, and in such a respectful manner. This shocked everyone on the street. When they looked at Yu Qianzhou again, their gazes were filled with extreme reverence. Without a doubt, this person was a soul formation final stage expert. Face had to be given to each other. Yu Qianzhou laughed and took 3 steps forward. He cupped his fists and said, "Brother Yin is too polite. I originally wanted to go up the mountain to disturb you after settling a small matter. I didn't expect Brother Yin to personally come. I am quite flattered." As he said this, he felt a bit annoyed. Yin Baikong was someone from the same generation as Master. If Master found out that he was calling him brother, would there be any trouble? The two of them stood face to face and looked at each other. Then, they laughed heartily. It was one thing for everyone to give each other face, but for Yin Baikong, if news of his friendship with Niu Yud were to spread, it would increase the pressure on certain people. Especially Fatty Pei, who had just been slapped in the face by Niu Yud. Martial ancestor. Guan Zhongkai saluted while trembling with fear. "Greetings, senior." Yulan Do, Yan Yu, and Tian Yi all saluted. At this time, Tian Yi and the others were indescribably excited. Senior Niu was indeed not an ordinary person. To be able to make a soul formation final stage expert, Yin Baikong, personally greet him, as Niu Yud's subordinates, they naturally basked in the limelight. They enjoyed the envious gazes of the crowd. Yin Baikong smiled and raised his hand, indicating that there was no need to be overly courteous. The demeanor of an expert was undoubtedly on full display. When his gaze swept past Li Qiuxiang, he slightly paused. He had just received a report about her, so he naturally knew what was going on. "Greetings, Senior Niu." Sikong Ju and the others also saluted. "I wonder what it is that made Brother Niu stay?" Yin Baikong asked despite knowing the answer. Yu Qianzhou waved his hand at Yin Baikong, indicating for him to wait a moment. His face darkened as he roared at Tian Yi and the other two, "What do you 3 want? Hurry up and give them the money you owe them, damn it. I've heard of people eating and dashing, but I've never heard of people acting so arrogantly in a brothel. It's my bad luck to run into you guys. I've lost all my face." Yin Baikong paused for a moment, then smiled. Tian Yi was terrified as he asked Yan Yu, "How much money?" Yan Yu forcefully suppressed her pounding heart. Good heavens, 2 soul formation final stage experts had come at the same time. The Sleeping Spring brothel was truly an honor. Originally, with this face and the influence it brought to the Sleeping Spring brothel, she shouldn't have taken the money. But Yan Yu gritted her teeth and waved at the Sleeping Spring brothel, only to see a trembling woman walking over and fearfully saying, 33 high-grade spirit stones and 16 mid-grade spirit stones. Yan Yu waved her hand, and the woman retreated as if she had been pardoned. Tian Yu was stunned, then said with some disbelief, "The 3 of us didn't do anything in there, we just asked for some things. How could it cost more than 30 high-grade spirit stones? You didn't calculate wrongly, did you?" Yan Yu sweetly smiled, "I didn't charge you a single spirit stone. You should know that the chairs you broke were all made of high-grade purple Chilan wood. If you don't know the price, why don't you ask around first, then you'll know if I'm lying or not." Tian Yi was startled. He had heard of the price of purple Chilan wood furniture. He also knew that she wasn't lying. Without saying anything, he injected his divine sense into his storage bag and found that there weren't even 10 high-grade spirit stones in total. So he weakly asked Hai Wei and Mo Xiaojun, "I'm still lacking, do you have any more?" The two who were asked looked a little embarrassed. They both glanced at Tian Yi. "You still don't know our wealth, are you deliberately trying to embarrass us?" Actually, the three of them were together every day. They all knew exactly how many spirit stones they had. Mo Xiaojun directly untied his storage bag and gave it to him. Hai Wei did the same. They didn't say how much money they had. With a bitter face, Tian Yi injected his divine sense into the two storage pouches and found that it was just as he expected. The spirit stones in the 3 storage pouches added up to less than 30 upper-grade spirit stones. Anyone could see that the 3 of them were embarrassed. They were loose cultivators after all. Most of them didn't have a source of spirit stones. It would be strange if they had a lot of money. Li Qiuxiang's face was covered with a cloth. Her expression couldn't be seen. Her hand touched the storage bag at her waist, but there was no movement. It wasn't that she couldn't bear to part with the spirit stones, but she was afraid that Tian Yi wouldn't be able to accept the spirit stones that she had obtained by selling her body. Yin Baikong glanced at Sikongju. The latter understood and nodded at Guan Zhongkai. Guan Zhongkai hurriedly took out his storage bag and paid for it in front of Yenyu. "Wait. I can't afford to let others pay for a brothel. I can't afford to lose face." Yu Qianqiu stopped Guan Zhongkai, walked over to Tian Yi and the other two's storage bags, injected his divine sense into them, and coldly snorted, shoved them back. Then, he took out a piece of purple spirit stone and threw it to Yenyu. Yenyu looked at the sparkling purple spirit stone in her hand. She couldn't help but cover her mouth. Everyone stared at the spirit stone in her hand, the legendary top-grade spirit stone. Although the group didn't say anything, their minds instantly became active. Sikongju quickly glanced at his master, and Yin Baikong's pupil shrunk. His left index finger tapped on the back of his right hand a few times, then he immediately calmed down. "Let's go, don't embarrass yourself here." Yu Qianqiu cursed at the few of them, then turned around and walked away. A top-grade spirit stone worth 10,000 high-grade spirit stones was casually given, but he didn't mention anything about asking for change. He was really generous. It wasn't in line with his style. "Senior Niu, please wait a moment." Yenyu called out. Yu Qianqiu turned back and said, "What's wrong? Could it be that a top-grade spirit stone isn't worth 30 high-grade spirit stones?" His words confirmed everyone's guess, and they looked at the purple spirit stone with even more amazement. Yenyu walked over with a smile, and ambiguously grabbed Yu Qianqiu's hand, stuffing the top-grade spirit stone into his palm, and charmingly said, "Senior must be joking. How would Yenyu dare to accept such a valuable thing from Senior? To be honest, the reason why I use the excuse of settling accounts to keep Senior here is because Yenyu has a request." "You have a request?" Yu Qianqiu was startled, and his stomach twisted 7 or 8 times, suspecting that there was some kind of conspiracy. Suddenly, he pointed at Yin Baikong and laughed. "The owner of this place is right in front of you. If you want something, you're asking him. My ability is limited, I can't help you much." His hand that was grabbed retracted. "Beautiful women are good, but it's a big loss. Why did you drag me into this?" Yin Baikong was startled, then he laughed and said, "Brother Niu is too modest, she hasn't even said what it is. How would Brother Niu know you can't help? Why don't you listen to her first, then it won't be too late." He was also curious. A mere brothel madam actually dared to have ideas about Niu Yud. He wanted to see what she was up to. Chapter 600. Senior is wise. Yenyu smiled and saluted Yin Baikong. Even though Yin Baikong was experienced and knowledgeable, he couldn't help but feel a bit absent-minded. There was such a beautiful woman in his territory and he didn't even know about it. The people watching from both sides of the street secretly admired the lady boss. To be able to talk and laugh in front of 2 late-stage spirit-severing experts was not something an ordinary person could do. Yu Qianqiu glanced at the two and began to ponder. Could it be that these two had dug a pit for him to jump into? Thinking about it, he felt that it was very possible. Who knew what the relationship between these two was? He had long heard that Een Baikong had many lovers, not to mention that they were in the same territory. Thus, he smiled at Yan Yu and said, "Let me say this first, my ability is limited. If I can't help, don't blame me for declining." He threw the spirit stones in his hand back into his storage pouch. Since the other party had already said that it wasn't for money, he had already shown his face with the top-grade spirit stones. It wasn't like he was rich. Yan Yu coquettishly looked at him and covered her mouth as she laughed. "I heard that Senior is overflowing with talent. You once wrote a poem in the ghost manner that is still widely praised in the cultivation world. Yan Yu also admires you greatly. Now that I finally have the chance to meet Senior, I naturally have to be thick-skinned and ask Senior to leave behind a poem." "Are you kidding me? What poem can I write?" "The rumors are wrong, I can't help you with this." Yu Qianqiu didn't even think about it and immediately refused. He had already thought about it. No matter what it was, as long as the other party asked, he would immediately refuse. "Senior, how many pairs of eyes have seen it? Can you even deny this?" Yan Yu was stunned. Seeing Yu Qianqiu shake his head, she couldn't help but look at Een Baikong with a sad expression. In the end, Een Baikong's index finger was greatly moved. What a rare beauty. Een Baikong's eyebrows twitched and he laughed. "Brother Nyo, you're quite good at evading this. You don't know that this matter is known to the whole world. You can't avoid it even if you want to." Borrowing Headmaster Yan's invitation, Brother Nyo should consider it as giving me face. There is no harm in leaving behind a famous poem for my cornucopia. Sikong Ju could be considered to be someone who understood his master's nature. Seeing his master's actions, he couldn't help but look at Yan Yu a few more times, taking note of her in his heart. In the future, even he wouldn't be able to provoke this woman. Yan Yu didn't think that Een Baikong would really speak up for her. After a moment of joy, a trace of worry flashed through her eyes as she vaguely guessed something. Then, he looked at Nyo Yud anxiously. Yu Qianqiu was speechless. Een Baikong actually dared to say such words. Then, he really couldn't refute Een Baikong's words in front of everyone, at least not now. But how could he compose a poem? His eyes inadvertently fell on the signboard of the Spring Slumber Brothel, and a thought flashed through his mind. "I can compose a poem for you." Yu Qianqiu chuckled. His brain cells should not be wasted. His hand unknowingly wrapped around Yan Yu's waist and pinched her while he was at it. He whispered in her ear, "But I can't do it for nothing. How are you going to repay me?" Such an ambiguous action caused Een Baikong's eyebrows to twitch a few times. Sikong Ju looked at his master, then at Nyo Yud. He was truly speechless. This matter was a little troublesome. Those who were paying attention to this side all secretly shook their heads. Sure enough, you can't judge a book by its cover. This Nyo Yud was actually a pervert. Tian Yi and the rest were even more speechless. Yan Yu glanced at Een Baikong from the corner of her eyes, then whispered to Yu Qianqiu, "As long as Senior takes a liking to it, feel free to take it." "Oh. Then let's find a chance to talk about repayment in private." Yu Qianqiu let go of her waist. Under everyone's gaze, he put his hands behind his back and pretended to stare at the Spring Slumber Brothel. He really did look like he was about to start writing. "I wonder how Brother Yin's handwriting is?" Yu Qianqiu asked as he stared at the Spring Slumber Brothel. To be honest, Een Baikong was currently in a very bad mood. The meat that he wanted to take a bite of was snatched away by someone else in the blink of an eye. It would be strange if he was happy. However, he quickly adjusted his mood. It was just a woman. Moreover, it was a woman who came from a brothel. Compared to his great undertaking, it was really insignificant. There were many women in this world. It was not worth making a fuss with Nyo Yud over such a woman. Een Baikong had already guessed his plan. He smiled and said, "Although I can write a few words, I'm afraid I can't compare to Brother Nyo's overflowing talent. Let's do it in this Spring Slumber Brothel. I leave a poem and you leave a word. We'll work together and leave a beautiful story in the cultivation world. What do you think?" Yu Qianqiu casually said. He said it casually, but Yin Baikong took it to heart, especially when he said, "Let's work together." It made him smile widely, and he replied with deep meaning, "All right, that's exactly what I was thinking." Unbeknownst to him, Yu Qianqiu did it because his words were not good enough. Otherwise, why would Yin Baikong be in the limelight for such a flashy event? Yu Qianqiu faced the spring slumber brothel with his hands behind his back. He nodded and immediately recited without hesitation, "Spring sleeps without knowing the dawn. Everywhere I hear birds singing. The wind and rain come at night. How many flowers fall?" After reciting, he turned to look at Yin Baikong and nodded slightly. "That's it?" Yin Baikong was stunned. He silently pondered for a moment before raising his hand and pointing at the slanted wall at the entrance of the spring slumber brothel. His 2 fingers trembled fiercely. Chi, the stone wall a few meters away flew into the air. In the blink of an eye, 4 large words appeared. Each word was vigorous and forceful, as if carved by a knife or axe. Overall, it looked like a dancing dragon and a dancing phoenix. It was indeed beautiful. At the same time, it also showed Yin Baikong's profound cultivation. These words were not directly drawn by Qi. Instead, wherever the Qi went, the stones around the words shattered, causing each word to stand out on the wall. To be able to control the hardness and softness of Qi to such an extent, and to do it from a distance, it was definitely not something an ordinary cultivator could do. The World Commerce Chamber of Commerce disciples all revealed proud expressions. The others were secretly shocked. As expected of a late-stage soul formation expert. Damn it. What's there to be proud of when I tell you to write a few words? Are you afraid that others don't know you're a late-stage soul formation expert? Yu Qianqiu cursed in his heart but praised, "Brother Yin, your words are really good. You flatter me." Yin Baikong laughed and then asked, "Do you have a name for the poem?" "Let's call it." Yu Qianqiu looked at the Spring Slumber Brothel's signboard and chuckled, "Let's call it Spring Slumber Brothel. This person is really..." Yin Baikong shook his head without saying anything. He raised his hand and with a few swishing sounds, the 3 words, "Spring Slumber Brothel," appeared in a bigger font. "Thank you, seniors." Yan Yu bowed. Although she said it sincerely, it was a little insincere because she didn't see anything good about the poem and thought Niu Yud was just brushing her off. She recited, "Spring sleeps without knowing the dawn, everywhere I hear the singing birds. The wind and rain come at night, how many flowers fall?" When she read the second line, she sensed a bit of ambiguity and couldn't help but roll her eyes at Niu Yud. The last 2 lines made people's imaginations roam. To be honest, Yin Baikong didn't see anything special before, but after Yan Yu recited it and then looked at the Spring Slumber Brothel's signboard, he suddenly had an expression of realization. He cheerfully said to Yu Qianqiu, "Brother Niu is indeed overflowing with talent. This poem is truly wondrous to the extreme." Yu Qianqiu chuckled and came over to put his arm around Yan Yu's waist, saying, "I'll keep the poem, I'll come ask for payment when I have time." After saying that, he laughed and left. He gestured to Yin Baikong, and the 2 of them led the group of people away. Yan Yu looked at Niu Yud's departing figure with a sense of loss and murmured, "He's a romantic scholar." As soon as they left, a large group of people appeared from the shops on both sides of the street and crowded outside the Spring Slumber Brothel. In an instant, the place was packed with people, competing to see the masterpiece left behind by 2 late-stage soul formation cultivators. In the distance, there were still people coming after hearing the news. Good poem, it really is a good poem." As expected of Senior Niu's masterpiece, "The more I look at it, the more interesting it becomes." A person rubbed his hands and laughed lewdly, occasionally glancing at the Spring Slumber Brothel and the poem. He couldn't help but touch the storage pouch on his waist, clenched his teeth, and entered the Spring Slumber Brothel. There was no lack of dull people in the crowd. Seeing the strange smiles on everyone's faces, they couldn't understand it, so they shamelessly asked their friend beside them, "What's so funny?" Their friend laughed wickedly and pointed at the Spring Slumber Brothel. "All the mysteries can be solved in the Spring Slumber Brothel. Then what are we waiting for? Let's go in and take a look. That person couldn't wait to pull his friend along. His friend grabbed him and laughed. Spring sleeps without knowing the dawn, birds chirping everywhere, the wind and rain come at night, who knows how many flowers have fallen. Hee hee. Now is not the time, come back at night. I guarantee you that after a night, you will understand the meaning of these 4 lines. A young cultivator flipped the poem over and over several times, seeing his senior marshal brother beside him was laughing lewdly. He couldn't help but ask, "Senior marshal brother, this poem is very simple. I don't see anything good about it." Snickers came from the side, then someone said, "Xiao Lu, take your junior marshal brother and leave. Senior Nyo's poem is very profound, you won't be able to understand it until you're old enough." The surrounding people immediately laughed. Xiao Lu hurriedly grabbed his junior marshal brother and ran away. After squeezing out of the crowd, he immediately scolded his junior marshal brother. "What do you know at such a young age? How dare you talk about Senior Nyo's masterpiece? Go back to the shop." "Senior marshal brother, where are you going?" the junior marshal brother asked. Xiao Lu, who was about to squeeze back into the crowd, glared and said, "I'm going to read Senior Nyo's poem again, then I'll go back later, you go first." In front of the spring slumber brothel, the crowd didn't disperse for a long time. However, it was full, and there was actually a long queue outside. Yan Yu sneered at the sight, silently cursing that all men were bad. She immediately ordered someone to draw up a new notice board and hang it up. The price was tripled. Immediately, complaints came from all directions, but now that the spring slumber brothel was more confident, and the lady boss had an ambiguous relationship with Nyo Yud, who dared to cause trouble here? It was more like courting death. The World Commerce Chamber of Commerce took special care of the spring slumber brothel, even sending a law enforcement team to stand guard here. Although there were complaints, there were still some curious people who didn't give up and refused to return. In the end, the long queue wasn't scared off by the high price. It was so noisy that the business of the nearby restaurants immediately became popular. Chapter 601. At the foot of God of Wealth Peak, Tian Yi and the others stayed behind. The 2 main characters didn't ask for anyone's company and headed up the mountain. Yin Baikong, who had just reached the peak, saw Yu Qianshou's late arrival. He looked at the flying sword and asked in confusion, "Brother Nyo, what do you mean?" "I'm currently cultivating a sword technique, so I often use the sword as a substitute for walking." Yu Qianshou's words were a little mysterious. Yin Baikong nodded. Since it was a secret regarding the other party's cultivation, it wasn't good to ask further. Wind and clouds were drifting on the mountain peak. A not too big nor too luxurious palace appeared cold and cheerless. On the signboard were the words, "Hall of Wealth." Outside the palace was a green stone slab with a pine tree beside it. Looking at the sea and clouds from this place really gave one a feeling of transcendence. Yu Qianshou surveyed the surroundings, and he couldn't help but click his tongue as he looked at the mountain range that was covered in floating clouds and auspicious clouds. It really is a blessed land. Brother Yin really knows how to pick a place. Brother Nyo is overpraising me. Compared to Brother Nyo's blessed land, there is still a gap. Oh right. Yin Baikong was puzzled. Where does Brother Nyo live? Why haven't I heard of Brother Nyo's name before? With Brother Nyo's cultivation, you shouldn't be a nobody in the cultivation world. Could it be that I'm ignorant? It was time to get to the main topic. Yu Qianshou smiled faintly and shook his head. It's not that Brother Yin is ignorant. It's just that you've never been to the place I come from. The place I've never been to? Yin Baikong's eyes flickered as he pondered. If there's a place I haven't been to in this world, it would be the eastern sacred lands and dense fog forest. Could it be that Brother Nyo comes from one of these two? Yu Qianshou nodded slightly and said, the latter. Dense fog forest? Yin Baikong was shocked. To be more precise, I only came from dense fog forest. I'm not from there. Yu Qianshou smiled meaningfully. Brother Nyo, I don't quite understand what you're trying to say. Could you elaborate a little more? Yin Baikong's eyes flickered. Yu Qianshou was not in a hurry to reply. He took out a golden robe from his storage bag and slowly put it on. After tidying himself up a little, his entire temperament became arrogant. Standing at the peak of the mountain, his golden robe shone with golden light under the sun. After that, he took out a simple and unadorned treasured sword. The tip of the sword was pointed at the ground, and both his hands were placed on his abdomen, supporting the hilt. He looked into the distance silently, his expression solemn and respectful. Baikong squinted his eyes. He could immediately tell that the golden robe was extraordinary. He had been in the World Chamber of Commerce for so many years and had seen countless things. There was almost no refining material in the world that he did not recognize. However, he couldn't tell what material this golden robe was made of. Especially when he looked at the treasured sword, his pupils suddenly shrank. The patterns on the treasured sword were simple and unadorned, and he seemed to have seen similar patterns in the fragmented ancient texts. With his eyesight and cultivation, he could tell at a glance that this treasured sword contained immense power. Its quality was definitely not inferior to a high-grade spirit treasure. He really wanted to release his divine sense to check the golden robe and treasured sword, but doing so without permission was taboo in the cultivation world. The other party could take it as a provocation. Then again, if it was someone with a lower cultivation than him, he would not hesitate to forcefully check it. However, this person was Nyo Yud, whose cultivation was no weaker than his. Just based on the fact that he couldn't see through the other party's cultivation, he could prove this point. "Brother Nyo, what are you doing?" Baikong asked in confusion. Yu Qianqiu coldly glanced at him and said indifferently, "There is an immortal ascension stage in the fog forest. On the immortal ascension stage hangs an immortal ascension horn. Any cultivator whose cultivation has broken through to the late stage of soul formation can head to the immortal ascension stage and blow the immortal ascension horn. An envoy from the celestial world will descend and bring them to the celestial world." Some time ago, a young man called Yu Qianqiu barged into the immortal ascension stage and blew the immortal ascension horn by mistake. This envoy was summoned here. Ah! Baikong was dumbfounded. There really was an immortal ascension stage in the fog forest. He was actually the envoy from the celestial world. Baikong's mind was in a daze as he listened to the other party continue, who knew that this Yu Qianqiu's cultivation hadn't even reached the soul formation stage, let alone the late stage of soul formation. What nonsense! In a fit of anger, this envoy wanted to kill him, but I was also curious. With his cultivation, how could he barge into the fog forest? Who knew that even he couldn't figure it out? Thus, I left the misty forest to investigate the cause of this matter. If I don't figure it out, what if anyone could barge into the fog forest and blow the immortal ascension horn? Wouldn't that be a joke? At this point, Yu Qianqiu's expression became indifferent. He turned to look at Baikong and asked, "Brother where do you think I came from?" Baikong swallowed his saliva with difficulty. He didn't know how to answer. After listening to Nyo Yud's words and thinking about what happened during this period of time, he felt that all the fog had been lifted. No wonder he had never heard of Nyo Yud in the cultivation world. With such a high cultivation, it was impossible for him to not show his face in the cultivation world. No wonder Nyo Yud only appeared in the cultivation world after Yu Qianqiu barged into the fog forest. It turned out that Nyo Yud was accidentally lured here by that rascal Yu Qianqiu. No wonder Nyo Yud didn't put any experts in the cultivation world in his eyes. With his identity as an envoy from the celestial world, did he need to be afraid of cultivators from the cultivation world? There was also the restriction-breaking pill that could forcefully increase one's cultivation, and the top-grade spirit stone that he casually threw down the mountain. This series of events all showed that he had an extraordinary background. Looking at the ancient sword with extraordinary power and the golden robe shining with a golden glow, Baikong was completely convinced, but it was still hard for him to accept it. The person standing in front of him was actually an immortal from the celestial world? The story of immortals descending to the human world only existed in legends. He didn't expect to see it in person. It was really unimaginable, brother. Brother Nyo. Baikong felt that this title was a bit awkward. He didn't know if it was appropriate to call him that now. Yu Qianqiu smiled faintly and put away his sword. He took off his golden robe and put it away as well. Then he said, Brother Yin, don't worry about it. You and I will continue as before. However, I have to say one thing first. Regarding my identity, you can't tell anyone else. Other than you, only Yu Qianqiu knows my identity. However, I've already warned that brat. He won't reveal it. I can't wait to block the news of such a good thing. Why would I tell anyone else? Yin Baikong hid the surprise in his heart and forcefully maintained his poise. He nodded and said, Brother Nyo, don't worry. I won't tell anyone else about your identity. Oh right. Yin Baikong seemed to suddenly remember something. He frowned and asked, Brother Nyo, do you still remember the matter with Yan Zhuixing? I'm ashamed to say that I doubted Brother Nyo before. But now, I'm completely convinced. I want to ask Brother Nyo, what's going on with that Yan Zhuixing? Hee hee. I've also heard about the matter of you guys chasing after Yan Zhuixing. I was just casually mentioning it. I didn't expect such a thing to happen. As for whether people believe me or not, what does that have to do with me? However, there's one thing that's beyond doubt. Yu Qianqiu said with a solemn expression, that Yan Zhuixing's cultivation technique is not simple. I didn't expect there to be such a tyrannical cultivation technique in the human world. I'm really surprised. If it wasn't for the fact that my cultivation technique is special and that I've been restricted in the immortal world to a certain extent, making it unsuitable for me to change to another cultivation technique, I would have personally captured that kid and studied him carefully. That's strange. Brother Nyo's eyes are definitely not wrong. However, Bing Qingzi actually dared to make a false oath. Isn't he afraid of retribution? Yin Baikong was puzzled. I've heard about it. To be honest, I can't figure it out either. Yu Qianqiu pondered and said, could it be that this cultivation technique is more powerful than I imagined? That it can make people protected even at the risk of retribution? No, there should be other reasons. How could there be such a heaven-defying cultivation technique in the human world? Otherwise, the immortal world wouldn't just sit and watch. Yin Baikong's eyes flashed with a trace of surprise. He then asked tentatively, could it be that there's some heaven-defying cultivation technique in the human world that even the immortal world knows about? Could it be that you think Yan Zhuixing can create some heaven-defying cultivation technique? Yu Qianqiu asked in reply. He then snorted and said, in the ancient times, there were some heaven-defying figures in this world. They almost changed the immortal world's dynasty. However, they were still exterminated in the end. Everything that should be destroyed has been destroyed. It's impossible for any heaven-defying cultivation technique to be left behind. That's not necessarily true. There are no absolutes in everything. Yin Baikong felt his heart beating faster. There was actually someone in this world who almost changed the immortal world's dynasty. Suppressing his emotions, he said calmly, since the immortal world has already exterminated them, there shouldn't be any more. Brother Nyo doesn't need to worry. I will think of a way to investigate that Yan Zhuixing. If there's anything, I will inform Brother Nyo. Yes. Investigate properly. Investigate Yan Zhuixing to death. I have confidence in the power of your World Commerce Association. Don't waste my efforts. Yu Qianqiu nodded and changed the topic. Brother Yin, I wonder if you've prepared the remaining 800 million high-grade spirit stones? Yin Baikong felt his heart ache. He forced a smile and said, I promised Brother Nyo. Naturally, I won't go back on my word. However, there's one thing I don't know. Brother Nyo is the immortal world's envoy. Do you still lack spirit stones? Brother Yin might not know. Spirit stones are also used in the immortal world. Sigh. Yu Qianqiu suddenly shook his head and sighed. Brother Yin, don't think that being the immortal world's envoy is so great. It's really nothing in the immortal world. I'm ashamed. Hee hee. Brother Nyo is too humble. Yin Baikong's words were pleasant to hear. However, he was coldly snorting in his heart. It would be strange if an errand boy from the immortal world could be anything. Not long after he said that, Sikong-ju came over with a few storage bags. In Baikong took the storage bags and waved his hand to dismiss Sikong-ju. He then handed the storage bags to Yu Qianqiu. The latter naturally accepted it without hesitation. Brother Nyo, when will the limit-breaking pill be refined? In Baikong asked. Chapter 602. Yu Qianqiu was in a good mood after the windfall, so he casually said, "Limit-breaking pill? I've never refined anything like that before, I don't know how to do it." In Baikong's face stiffened, then turned green. He stared at Yu Qianqiu with hatred. "Brother Nyo, you're not joking, right? If it weren't for his cultivation and identity, In Baikong would have tortured this guy to death already." Yu Qianqiu turned to look at his expression and was slightly stunned. Then he laughed. "Brother In, don't misunderstand, I really don't know how to refine pills, but that doesn't mean I can't get limit-breaking pills. As long as you have spirit stones, I can get you as many as you want, I'm just afraid you don't have enough money." Hearing this, In Baikong's expression softened, then he pointed at the sky suspiciously. "Could it be that Brother Nyo is saying that you can get limit-breaking pills from the immortal world?" Yu Qianqiu nodded. "I'll be honest with Brother In, I hope Brother In can keep this a secret." "Of course." In Baikong looked forward to his next words. "To tell you the truth, limit-breaking pills are treasures here, but in the immortal world, they aren't considered high-level spirit pills. Although I don't know how to refine them, there are many people in the immortal world who can. As long as you have spirit stones, you can hire someone to refine them. I've said it before, I'm a bit tight on money in the immortal world, but as a guide, other immortals don't have the convenience of being able to descend to the mortal world as they wish, but I can." Yu Qianqiu winked at him. "Brother In is a smart person, I'm sure you understand what I mean." "Oh. Wonderful, wonderful." In Baikong suddenly understood and clapped his hands. He really did understand. Other immortals in the immortal world couldn't descend to the mortal world as they wished, but this Nyo Yud, as a guide, could travel between the immortal world and the mortal world. Moreover, Nyo Yud said he was tight on money. This guy wanted to sell limit-breaking pills in the immortal world to earn spirit stones in the mortal world. It seems Brother In understands what I mean. Yu Qianqiu laughed. Understood, completely understood. It was only human nature. I'm also from a business background. It's good that there's money to be made." In Baikong's face was full of smiles as he rubbed his hands together in excitement. What a joke. Since this Nyo Yud was able to obtain a limit-breaking pill from the immortal world, he should be able to obtain something else. This is really too wonderful. The heavens are really helping me. The reason why I caused such a commotion in the ghost manor was because I wanted to see who in the cultivation world has the strongest financial resources. Yu Qianqiu winked at In Baikong with a sinister smile and said, "I've long heard that the World Commerce Association has the deepest financial resources. I didn't expect it to be so. With such a wealthy partner, things will be much easier to cooperate with." "Brother Ox, you're right. I like it. It's better to have more financial resources when doing business." In Baikong patted his chest and said, "I don't dare to say anything else in the cultivation world, but when it comes to financial strength, if my world commerce says it's number 2, no one would dare to say they're number 1. Good. Yu Qianqiu praised him 3 times and said, "So you're saying that I didn't choose the wrong person to cooperate with?" No, I guarantee that Brother Ox will not find a more suitable person than me in the cultivation world," In Baikong said with certainty. Yu Qianqiu moved his head over and said softly, "It's fine as long as you know this. Don't let other people hear about it, in case there's an accident." "Of course." In Baikong finished speaking. The two of them looked at each other and suddenly burst into laughter. Their laughter was very happy, as if their schemes had succeeded. One was racking his brains to ruthlessly tear off a big piece of fat from the World Commerce Association. The other was thinking of how to get something good from the immortal world through the other party. Both of them were scheming. In reality, both of them were people who wouldn't get up early without benefits. Neither of them were good people. Oh right, Brother Ox. Ian Baikong asked, I don't know when you can get the limit-breaking pill from the immortal world. To be honest, I also want to see the miraculous effects of this pill. I want to broaden my horizons. Although he believed in Nyo Yud's background, he had always been careful. Some things naturally had to be seen to be believed. It was impossible for him to believe whatever Nyo Yud said. If that was the case, he wouldn't be Ian Baikong. He had to at least verify it. Yu Qianshou sneered in his heart and pretended not to understand what he meant. He raised his hand and took out the bracelet on his wrist. After injecting his divine sense into it, he frowned and muttered, Li Qiuxiang is only at the late stage of foundation establishment. She needs 7 pills to reach the early stage of tribulation passing. Amano is at the middle stage of nascent soul and needs 2 pills. The other 2 guys need 3 pills each. That's a total of 15 pills. There's still 2 left. The bracelet flickered and 2 red lights flashed into Yu Qianshou's palm. He handed over the 2 red pills and said, there are still 15 pills left. I have to leave them for the guys who just accepted them. Brother Ian, these 2 pills are for you to broaden your horizons. When I return to the immortal world, I'll get you another batch. Just from the pill halo, I can tell that it's good stuff. Normal people don't have such superb refining skills. As expected of a pill refined in the immortal world. Ian Baikong held the pills and sighed. The pill halo was like a treasure, it was truly attractive. Then, he looked down the mountain in silence. Not long after, he saw Sikongju carrying a person in each of his hands. Sikongju bowed and said, Master, Senior Nyo. 1 early stage foundation establishment disciple and 1 early stage core formation disciple. Greetings, Ancestor. The 2 disciples said in fear. They didn't know why they were caught by Sikongju and brought to the God of Wealth Peak. Normally, they didn't have the qualifications to come to this place, especially when they saw the mountain guarding ancestor. No need to be nervous. Ian Baikong smiled wholeheartedly and raised his hand. Then, he opened his palm and 2 red pills appeared in his palm. He said to Sikongju, Sikongju, these are 2 limit-breaking pills. Let them see their effects. These are limit-breaking pills? Sikongju's eyes lit up. He took the 2 pills and couldn't help but praise, Tisk Tsk. What superb refining skills, there's actually pill halo. Ian Baikong and Nyo Yud looked at each other and smiled with tacit understanding. Sikongju was happy when he saw his master's smile. It seemed that his master and Nyo Yud's private conversation had a very satisfactory result. Otherwise, they wouldn't be smiling so happily. Also, the 2 of them seemed to have reached some sort of tacit understanding. Sikongju opened the pills in his hands and said, You 2 have the chance to try the limit-breaking pills first. Hurry up and thank Ancestor and Senior Nyo. Naturally, the 2 disciples had heard of the limit-breaking pill. It was a panacea that was widely known in the cultivation world. It was said that it could quickly increase a person's cultivation. When they saw that the 2 pills had a pill halo that they had never seen before, they were even more surprised. They didn't think that this benefit would fall into their hands. Thus, they repeatedly thanked Ian Baikong and Nyo Yud. Ian Baikong gestured for Sikongju to begin. The latter then asked Yu Qianshou, Senior Nyo, I heard that it needs to be used with spirit stones? Of course. Without sufficient spirit energy, how can they increase their cultivation for no reason? How can there be such a good thing? Yu Qianshou said disapprovingly, their cultivation is still shallow. They won't need that many spirit stones. Under Yu Qianshou's guidance, the 2 disciples took the pills and sat down cross-legged. Sikongju immediately poured out a large pile of spirit stones between them. Not long after, the 2 disciples' bodies turned red. They seemed to be unbearably hot. They immediately followed the instructions and grabbed the spirit stones on the ground to absorb the spirit energy to cool down. A few hours later, their expressions returned to normal, and they stopped absorbing the spirit stones. When they opened their eyes one after another, their eyes were filled with unconcealable joy. They were so excited that they didn't know what to say. Based on the three's cultivation, they could tell that the two disciples' cultivation had indeed increased by one level. Yin Baikong signaled Sikong Ju with his eyes. The latter moved in a flash and grabbed the two disciples' wrists. He then silently checked their body conditions. There's nothing wrong with their bodies. Their cultivation has also increased by one level. The limit-breaking pill truly lives up to its name. Sikong Ju hinted to his master that there were no problems. Yin Baikong's face revealed a smile and he gestured for him to bring the two disciples down. Sikong Ju quickly collected the remaining spirit stones on the ground and grabbed the two disciples who were still excited to go down the mountain. Early-stage foundation establishment used more than 100 high-grade spirit stones. Early-stage core formation used more than 3,000. It seems that depending on the level of cultivation, the amount of spirit stones absorbed is also different. Yin Baikong turned his head and said, "Brother Nyo, am I right?" "Correct." Yu Qianqiu nodded with a smile. He. I've really broadened my horizons today. I didn't think there would be such a miraculous spirit pill. Yin Baikong was filled with joy as he sighed. Broadened my ass. He was just worried that there was a problem with the spirit pill and wanted to find someone to test it out. Old fox. Yu Qianqiu cursed in his heart. However, on the surface, he didn't care and said, "This kind of spirit pill is nothing in the immortal world. There are many more miraculous ones. It's just that they are expensive. That's natural. There are many good things in the immortal world." Yin Baikong rubbed his hands and laughed. He thought that he shouldn't be too hasty. He should take it step by step. His gaze suddenly stopped on Yu Qianqiu's bracelet. He pointed at it in surprise and said, "I saw Brother Nyo take something out from it earlier. Could it be that this bracelet has a storage space?" "Oh." Yu Qianqiu took off the bracelet on his wrist and handed it to Yin Baikong. "That's right. This thing is similar to the storage pouch here. However, there are 10 storage spaces inside. Its capacity is much larger than the storage pouch." Yin Baikong was taken aback. He didn't expect Huang Xiaolong to show it to him. Receiving the bracelet, Huang Xiaolong injected his divine sense into it and found that there were indeed 10 storage spaces inside, arranged in a ring shape on the bracelet. He immediately clicked his tongue. Not bad, not bad. This is indeed a good thing, worthy of being an item from the immortal world. Based on the cultivation world's refining standards, a bracelet can't contain so many storage spaces. However, he was a little disappointed. There weren't many things inside the bracelet, no wonder Huang Xiaolong would show it to him. Suppressing the joy in his heart, Huang Xiaolong returned the bracelet. "If it's convenient for Brother Nyo, why don't you help me buy one from the immortal world?" Then he added, "How many spirit stones do I need?" A businessman's natural instincts were hard to change. Yu Qianqiu snickered inwardly. Putting the bracelet back on his wrist, he nonchalantly said, "That's easy, 3 divine-grade spirit stones are enough." Chapter 603. Divine-grade spirit stone? The muscles on Yin Baikong's face twitched uncontrollably. It was hard to tell what expression he was wearing. The dignified late-stage spirit-severing expert asked weakly, "Brother Nyo, are you talking about divine-grade spirit stones? I didn't hear wrongly, right?" "I. Look at me, I keep forgetting about this." Yu Qianqiu slapped his forehead, a wry smile on his face. "I forgot this is the mortal world, not the immortal world. Where would divine-grade spirit stones come from?" He patted the storage bag hanging at his waist, and a black shadow flickered out. 2 fingers clamped together, like a magic trick, the black light flickered between his fingers. Yin Baikong's eyes were glued to the black light, but Nyoyud flicked his finger, and a crisp, ding, sound rang out as a black shadow shot towards him. Yin Baikong caught the black light, and in his palm was something that looked exactly like a spirit stone, but it was a black color that he had never seen before. The black luster exuded an alluring allure. Lightly clenching his fist, Yin Baikong inserted his divine sense into the black light, and immediately felt the majestic spiritual energy contained within. It was hard to believe that such a small piece of black light could contain so much spiritual energy. Divine Grade Spirit Stone, it really is the legendary Divine Grade Spirit Stone. Yin Baikong muttered under his breath, looking at the black light in his palm. A faint trace of excitement rose in his heart. Not to mention Divine Grade Spirit Stones, he had never even seen a top-grade spirit stone before. It was only rumored that a top-grade spirit stone had appeared in an auction in China's cultivation world. Who would have thought that he would be able to see a Divine Grade Spirit Stone today? Despite his wealth, he couldn't restrain his excitement. As the person in charge of the world's largest business organization, his knowledge was extensive, but the things that Nyoyud took out today struck him again and again. They were all good things that he had never seen before. It made him feel like he was a frog in a well, so ignorant. At this point, the last trace of doubt in his heart was dispelled. He completely believed that Nyoyud really came from the immortal world, otherwise, how could there be so many things that couldn't be seen in the mortal world? Little did he know, this was exactly what Yu Qianqiu was hoping for. Brother Yin, I'm short on money, I only have one piece. Yu Qianqiu reminded him as he hooked his finger at the thing in Yin Baikong's hand. Oh. Yin Baikong came to his senses, and reluctantly returned the Divine Grade Spirit Stone to Nyoyud, watching helplessly as Nyoyud stuffed the spirit stone into his storage bag. A piece of Divine Grade Spirit Stone can be exchanged for 100 million high-grade spirit stones. In other words, a storage bracelet is worth 300 million high-grade spirit stones, Yu Qianqiu said. 300 million top-rank spirit stones? Yin Baikong was taken aback for a second, then said in disbelief, so expensive? At this price, a storage bag with the capacity of 3 rooms can buy 100 million of them. There's something you don't know. Yu Qianqiu shook his head and sighed. Let me tell you this. In the immortal world, divine grade spirit stones were widely used, just like the high-grade spirit stones here. Top-grade spirit stones were like mid-grade spirit stones, and high-grade spirit stones were like low-grade spirit stones. Those immortal world's experts, with their cultivation, would find it troublesome and slow to absorb spiritual energy from top-grade spirit stones. Most of them would absorb spiritual energy from divine-grade spirit stones. Take Brother Yin for example. If you absorb spiritual energy, would you take out a pile of low-grade spirit stones? I wouldn't. Yin Baikong shook his head. I only use high-grade spirit stones. I'm too lazy to even use mid-grade spirit stones. That's why I said it. It's the same principle. Yu Qianqiu laughed heartily. The immortal world's prices are indeed a little too high if we look at it from the perspective of this world. But in the immortal world, everyone is used to it. Brother Nyo, don't say any more, I understand. Forget about the storage bracelet, it's not worth it to buy one. I'll just use a storage bag to store things. Yin Baikong smiled bitterly, then suddenly frowned, asking doubtfully, according to Brother Nyo, how much is a limit-breaking pill worth in the immortal world? Limit-breaking pills are very cheap in the immortal world. The price-to-performance ratio is as common as the energy-restoring pills here. Yu Qianqiu said disapprovingly, one limit-breaking pill costs 90 peak-grade spirit stones. I'm going to sell it for 100 peak-grade spirit stones and earn 10 peak-grade spirit stones for each pill. Yin Baikong sucked in a breath of cold air, dumbfounded, using high-grade spirit stones as the price. In other words, each pill costs 1 million top-grade spirit stones? Brother Yin thinks it's too expensive? Yu Qianqiu's brows furrowed. How about this? I'm a little short on money these days. Lend me your 1 billion first, I'll sell a batch of limit-breaking pills later. Anyway, the cornucopia gathering is about to begin. 1 billion can be exchanged for more than 1,000 limit-breaking pills. I believe the several hundred forces in the cultivation world will have no problem buying these limit-breaking pills. Ah. You want to sell the limit-breaking pills to the countries? Yin Baikong was a little dumbfounded. Yu Qianqiu, on the other hand, kept his head down and continued to calculate. I believe a country can take out 100 million top-grade spirit stones without a problem. More than 300 countries can be exchanged for more than 30 billion. One limit-breaking pill is worth 1 million, I can earn 100,000 per pill. 30 billion, I can make a difference of 3 billion. This is the most conservative estimate of the purchasing power. 5 billion is not a problem. Also, there is the richest cultivation world, China. There are many sects there. There are many sects that can take out 1 billion, I can make a big profit. The more he calculated, the more excited he became. In the end, he couldn't help but smile. Brother Ian, your 1 billion top-grade spirit stones, I promise I can easily return it to you in less than a month. Lend me 1 billion for a month, when the time comes, I promise to return it on time. What do you think? At most, I'll give you interest. Ian Baikong looked at him speechlessly, thinking to himself, if you make the other forces strong with the limit-breaking pills, then will my world commerce still have a foothold? Think about it, all the country's forces are at least at the tribulation stage, only the world commerce is mixed. I'm afraid it won't be long before many forces want to replace the world commerce. Then what's the point? What? Yu Qianqiu was a little unhappy. Brother Ian, don't you want to lend me the money? If you don't want to, then forget it, I'll return it to you now. I'll talk to the other forces, if it doesn't work, I'll just use the money I have on me to do it a few more times. But let me say this first, even if business is not done, I'll still be righteous. Don't reveal my identity and background, in case we turn against each other. As soon as he finished speaking, he reached into his storage bag and took out something, as if it was real. Brother Nyo, don't misunderstand, I didn't mean it that way. Ian Baikong didn't know whether to laugh or cry as he pressed down on his hand, smiling bitterly. It's not what you think. What I mean is, I'll eat 1,000 limit-breaking pills worth 1 billion high-grade spirit stones, so you don't have to sell them anymore. When he said this, his heart twitched. Logically speaking, one limit-breaking pill was worth 1 million high-grade spirit stones. Judging from its proper value, it wasn't expensive, and it was worth it. Of course, this was only for him. If he used it himself, with such a miraculous effect, one pill wouldn't be too expensive even if it was 100 million. But if he wanted to use it on a large scale, it would be an astronomical figure, a very large figure, and it was ridiculously expensive. But the key was that he didn't need the limit-breaking pill, he just wanted to buy it to raise the cultivation of the people in the world commerce. If he wanted to buy 10,000 pills, he would need 10 billion. But the number of disciples in the world commerce was far more than 10,000, and not everyone could reach the tribulation stage with one pill. There were many people who needed a few pills. In addition, after every disciple took the limit-breaking pill, they would need a large number of spirit stones to help raise their cultivation. At that time, the consumption of spirit stones would be quite terrifying, and even the world commerce, the richest in the world, would find it hard to bear. But then again, he had no choice but to buy it. If a large number of limit-breaking pills fell into the hands of other powers, it would definitely not be a good thing for the world commerce. It might even bring disaster to the world commerce. Rather than being destroyed, it was better to temporarily feel the pinch. In the long run, the temporary pinch was worth it. As long as the overall strength of the world commerce rose to the next level, the wealth would naturally come rolling in. You want all 1,000 limit-breaking pills worth 1 billion? Yu Qianqiu said in shock. That's right. Ian Baikong gritted his teeth and nodded. At first, he thought that Nyo Yud knew how to refine pills, and also thought that his cultivation was inferior to his, so he planned to recruit Nyo Yud as his subordinate. Who would have thought that this guy's background was so incredible? He was actually a guide from the immortal world, and his cultivation was higher than his. Damn it. He couldn't scold him, he couldn't hit him, and he had to deal with him carefully. It was really unbearable. This guy had nothing better to do. Wasn't it better to stay in the immortal world? Why did he have to come to the human world? It wasn't as if you had less trouble. No, the main culprit was that damned Yu Qianqiu. If it wasn't for that bastard, how could this immortal descend to the human world? Ian Baikong gnashed his teeth in hatred. The world commerce is indeed rich. Yu Qianqiu gave a thumbs up and praised, but then he shook his head and said, Brother Ian, I'm really sorry, I can't let you eat all of them. Ian Baikong was shocked. Why? Isn't it the same no matter who you sell it to? You'll make money either way, sell it to the world commerce in one go, and you won't have to go through the trouble. No, it's completely different. Yu Qianqiu waved his hand. Think about it. I already owe you $1 billion. If I sell the limit-breaking pill to you, you won't have to pay, then I won't have much liquid capital. Selling it to someone else is different. I can pre-order a batch in the immortal world. After the limit-breaking pill is sold, I can immediately return to the immortal world with spirit stones. This way, I can sell it again and again. The compound interest is very impressive. If I give it all to you, it will cut off a lot of my liquid capital. I won't be able to earn a lot. It really isn't worth it. Yin Baikong was dumbfounded. He realized that Niu Yud was more suited to doing business than him. He really had a business mind. The compound interest was coming out. He was stunned for a while. He really didn't know what to say. Chapter 604. Brother Niu, how many limit-breaking pills do you think you can get from the immortal world? Yin Baikong gritted his teeth. Old bastard. Finally thought it through? Yu Qianqiu rejoiced inwardly and said solemnly, several tens of thousands can be obtained, right? If I make too many, I'm afraid it'll be too conspicuous and attract the attention of others in the immortal world. But then again, it's not very possible to get tens of thousands at once. I don't dare to be so ostentatious. I reckon that the first batch should be able to get 10,000 without a problem. As for the follow-up, I'll have to wait for 1.5 years. Safety first. However, I have limited spirit stones on hand. It'll be difficult to get 10,000, so I can only get 1,000 first and repeat a few more times. Tens of thousands? Yin Baikong was quite shocked and his face darkened. After hesitating for a while, he suddenly raised his head and said, Brother Niu, I'll eat the first 10,000. Yu Qianqiu was laughing inside, but on the surface he asked in surprise, Brother Yin, don't joke around. 10,000 limit-breaking pills are worth 10 billion high-grade spirit stones. Can you eat that many? Brother Niu, don't worry about this. I'll think of a way. I won't forget the money. Also, I'll eat the next tens of thousands. Yin Baikong said in a deep voice. His face revealed a murderous and decisive aura as if he had made an important decision. Yu Qianqiu's eyes narrowed. This time, he was really shocked, extremely shocked. Yin Baikong actually wanted to eat tens of thousands of limit-breaking pills. His tone was too big. If it was 50,000 limit-breaking pills, wouldn't he have to take out 50 billion high-grade spirit stones? Was the World Commerce Association really that rich? Brother Yin, you're not joking, right? That's a few hundred billion. Don't make fun of me. Yu Qianqiu's expression was somewhat cold. I'll pay first and take the goods later. Is there anything Brother Niu is worried about? Yin Baikong's expression didn't look like he was joking. Yu Qianqiu's heart thumped wildly. He was already imagining himself rolling around on a pile of tens of billions of high-grade spirit stones. However, Yin Baikong continued, but I have a condition. I hope Brother Ox can agree to it. Damn it. As expected, there was no such thing as a free lunch. Yu Qianqiu complained in his heart, I don't know what the condition is. Why don't you tell me first? Business is business, so I will speak frankly. Yin Baikong said with a solemn face, limit-breaking pills, however many you have, I will eat all of them. Moreover, I have to pay first before taking the goods. But Brother Niu, you have to promise not to sell it to anyone else, only to me. There was a conspiracy, there was definitely a conspiracy. Yu Qianqiu's brain spun a few times, but he couldn't figure out what Tong Yin Baikong wanted to do. He could not help chuckling and said, Brother Yin, forgive me for being blunt, but I'm afraid you won't be able to use tens of thousands of restriction-breaking pills. Of course, it's not that you can't afford it. There is something you might not know, but I have to remind you so that you won't feel unhappy when the time comes. Yin Baikong looked like he had already made up his mind. He calmly nodded and said, Brother Niu, Please speak your mind. Since it's a piece of advice, I am all ears. Yu Qianshou carefully observed the changes in Yin Baikong's expression and slowly said, limit-breaking pills can only help people increase their cultivation to the early stage of tribulation passing. After that, they are useless. For example, an early-stage foundation establishment cultivator would need one limit-breaking pill for every increase in cultivation level. All the way to the early stage of tribulation passing, they would need 9 limit-breaking pills. However, along with the consumption of spirit stones, from early stage foundation establishment to early stage of tribulation passing, they would need around 1.2 million high-grade spirit stones. In addition to the 9 limit-breaking pills worth 9 million high-grade spirit stones, they would need a total of more than 10 million high-grade spirit stones. Brother Ian, that's tens of thousands of limit-breaking pills. Can you really afford it? To be honest, Yu Qianshou believed that no matter how rich the World Commerce Association was, they would not be able to fork out so much money. It should be known that out of his close to 10,000 subordinates, more than half of them were still unable to break through to the early stage of tribulation passing. The main reason was that the consumption of spirit stones was too large. This was under the condition that the limit-breaking pills could be produced and used for free. The World Chamber of Commerce had so many disciples, and a limit-breaking pill cost 1 million high-grade spirit stones. If they were to casually raise half of the World Chamber of Commerce's disciples to the early stage of tribulation passing, they would need at least 100 billion high-grade spirit stones. And this was a low estimate. Yin Baikong silently pondered for a while, then raised his head and declared again, I'll pay first, I'll take the goods later. The meaning behind his words was very clear. Don't worry, I won't shortchange you. Fuck. The World Commerce Association was this rich? Yu Qianshou frowned slightly and said, since you and I are sincere in our cooperation, I can't just focus on the present and ignore the future. After all, there will definitely be opportunities for cooperation in the future. There's something I need to tell you. It's true that the limit-breaking pill can help people increase their cultivation, but it can't help people break through bottlenecks. For example, when breaking through from the late stage of foundation establishment to the early stage of core formation, a similar bottleneck cannot be broken through. Ah. Yin Baikong was stunned, then said in surprise, that's not right. I heard that when Brother Nyo was at Ghost Village, you helped 2 loose cultivators break through from the foundation establishment stage to the early stage of tribulation passing. Could the rumors be wrong? No, the rumors are true. Yu Qianshou waved his hand, then took out a spirit pill from his storage pouch that was surrounded by a 7-colored halo and threw it to Yin Baikong, saying, this pill is called 7 Treasures Pill. Before he could finish, he heard Yin Baikong say in surprise, this is the legendary 7 Treasures Pill that can help people break through bottlenecks? Is it the 7 Treasures Pill whose main ingredient is the 7-colored lingji? That's right. Yu Qianshou smiled, Brother Yin is really knowledgeable. But this thing is similar to the limit-breaking pill, it's quite common in the immortal realm. I used this thing at Ghost Village to help those 2 loose cultivators break through to the early stage of tribulation passing. However, it's only effective up to the tribulation passing stage, it has no effect on cultivators above the soul formation stage. Brother Ian, why don't you find someone to test the effects of the 7 Treasures Pill? The immortal realm is indeed the immortal realm. Yin Baikong sighed, then immediately summoned Sikong-ju, who was waiting at the foot of the mountain. Not long after, Sikong-ju brought over another disciple who met the requirements. There were many disciples in the World Commerce Association, so finding a disciple who met the requirements was too easy. This disciple had been stuck at the late stage of nascent soul for a long time, unable to break through, and had been very distressed. He didn't expect to encounter such a good thing. Ancestor and Senior Nyo, 2 peerless experts, personally bestowed him a spirit pill. When Sikong-ju saw the 7-colored 7 Treasures Pill, he looked at his master who was smiling without saying a word. He thought to himself, it seems like I've done a great service to be able to invite Nyo Yud to the World Commerce Association. Master's mental state is quite good. After a while, the disciple sitting cross-legged trembled and white steam came out of his body. When he opened his eyes, he immediately kowtowed to Yin Baikong and Yu Qianqiu. Thank you, ancestor, thank you, Senior Nyo. What a joke, the nascent soul stage and the tribulation passing stage were two completely different concepts. Once he broke through, it would be strange if he wasn't happy. Sikongju quickly checked his body's condition, then happily said, "Not bad, your body is fine. You've already broken through to the early stage of tribulation passing. As expected of the 7 treasures pill. You guys leave first, I still have something to discuss with Brother Nyo. Without my summons, no one is allowed to disturb us. Sikongju, personally stand guard at the foot of the mountain. Remember, no one is allowed to disturb us." Yin Baikong warned again. Yes. Sikongju respectfully bowed towards the two. At this moment, Nyo Yud had become very, very important in his heart. Everything he discussed with Master had to be listed as the World Commerce Association's top secret and absolutely could not be disturbed by anyone. After he left the mountain, he immediately mobilized dozens of tribulation passing stage experts, each bringing 7 or 8 tribulation passing stage disciples. They surrounded the foot of the God of Wealth Peak in the highest state of alert. He also gave a death order: no one was allowed to approach. If anyone dared to disobey, they would be killed without mercy. Such a state of panic immediately attracted the attention of many people. They didn't know what was happening on the God of Wealth Peak. They only knew that there were 2 soul formation final stage experts on the God of Wealth Peak at the moment. Jing Yuankong didn't like Senior Brother's order that no one was allowed to approach, because if anyone included him, it would have a significant impact on his prestige in the cornucopia. Although he didn't say anything, he found an excuse and prepared to go up the mountain to report to Master. Unexpectedly, the disciple guarding the mountain really stopped him and didn't let him go up. This immediately made him furious. The disciple guarding the mountain didn't dare to offend him, but he also didn't dare to let him go, so he immediately sent a message to Sikongju. After Sikongju arrived and understood the situation, he said coldly, "It's not that I don't want Junior Brother to go up the mountain, but Master has issued a decree that he has important matters to discuss with Senior Nyo, and no one is allowed to go up the mountain to disturb him. Including me, no one is allowed to go up without Master's summons. Junior Brother, please go back for now." After mentioning Yin Baikong, what else could Jing Yuankong say? He could only go back with a gloomy face. This was just a small episode at the foot of the mountain, but it illustrated a problem. Although the World Commerce Association was rich and powerful, it was precisely because of this that there were unavoidable struggles for power and profit. And these 2 brothers had the same cultivation, and Yin Baikong couldn't be immortal. In the end, only one person could control the World Commerce Association. Who was it? Who won and who lost was still to be determined. The 2 people on the mountain naturally didn't know what was happening at the foot of the mountain. When Yin Baikong found out that other than the limit-breaking pill, he also needed the 7 treasure pill to raise his cultivation, he didn't seem unhappy at all. Instead, a trace of excitement could be seen in his eyes. Yu Qianqiu was even more confused, but he said without batting an eyelid, "Brother Yin, although I'm not a gentleman, for the sake of our future cooperation, I really have to advise you to think thrice before you act." These words made Yin Baikong smile slightly. Nyo Yid's repeated dissuasion made him even more certain of the decision in his heart. At least one thing was certain: Nyo Yid was definitely a person who did business with sincerity. He wasn't the kind of person who would leave after earning a sum of money. Yin Baikong was instantly reassured. It was extremely important to be able to build a business foundation of mutual trust with this kind of dealer from the immortal world. This meant that he would be rolling in money in the future. You're tuning into the Journey of the Soul YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.